Hi there, my name is Michelle Gaskin, and I am going to be going through a McKinney Vento presentation today. We are required each year to provide a refresher training for all staff in our schools, talking about the McKinney Vento law and our resources that we provide for students. McKinney-Vento is a federal law that requires all school districts to remove the barriers to the enrollment, attendance, and success in school for students who are experiencing homelessness. So we define homeless in the school districts as any student who is lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. At the end of last school year, we had a total of 850 homeless students. This is a little bit lower than in a typical year. We had a decline in identification, mostly since we were remote for a lot of the school year, and it made it a little bit more challenging to identify students. We have a new name for our program this year. We were previously known as the Students in Transition Program. We are now known as the HEART Program, which is an umbrella of McKinney-Vento Law, foster care students, and the FCRC program. Some of the rights of McKinney-Vento students: they can remain attending their school of origin, even if they're living outside of their school boundaries, and then, of course, even if they're outside of their district boundaries as well. We can transport to and from school, sometimes even all the way out in Portland, Battleground, Camas, all if it's within the student's best interest, then we can provide that transportation to keep them stable. We always want to enroll immediately, even if they are lacking complete records like immunizations, previous school transcripts, and then we never require proof of residence as well. And then we also want to provide them access to all of the same programs and services that we would provide to any other student, and remove all of the barriers that might come up for that student to participate in the program or service. So going back to students who qualify under McKinney-Vento, like I said, they lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. That typically means they're in one of these situations: in a homeless shelter, living unsheltered in cars, vehicles, campgrounds, or trailers. Sometimes they're in a residence that doesn't have any electricity or water, and we would consider that inadequate. Sometimes they're living in motels or hotels. And most of the time, we have students who are living temporarily doubled up with friends or family due to some sort of hardship. We also have families who have lost housing, maybe temporarily due to a fire or a flood in their home or other natural disaster. For shelters, we have students kind of all across the Clark County area and sometimes in Portland as well. We have Oak Ridge Youth Shelter for students up to age 17. There's Open House Ministries in downtown Vancouver. And then Share operates 2 family shelters: Orchards Inn in the Orchards area and Valley Homestead in the Hazeldale area. The Who is the winter hospitality overflow shelter that runs from November to March, and that's located at St. Andrew's Church in the Orchards area. That's a nighttime shelter for families to sleep at during the more brutally cold months out of the year. And then we also have Family Promise, which is fairly new to Clark County, and that is a rotating church shelter where churches across the county host families on typically a weekly basis. And they also operate a day center for families to do laundry, take showers, and receive case management. For our families who are living in vehicles or camping, typically they are staying in a safe park location, which is a program in Clark County that has church parking lots open up to families to park at night and sleep. We have families that are staying in trailers that might not have electricity or water hookups. And then we have families typically during the warmer summer months that are staying in tents or campgrounds. Typically, families stay in Paradise Point or in Battleground Lake State Parks. For our families in motels and hotels, If it's due to a financial hardship or a loss of housing, then they qualify for our program. Some of the common motels that our families end up in are Motel 6 and extended stay. A lot of times if we have families living in motels, it might be due to a displacement if they have a fire or flood in their home and they're put up in a motel temporarily while repairs are being completed. Those families would also qualify. And then lastly, we have our most common population of McKinney Vento students, which are families who are doubled up. The key components for families who are doubled up to qualify for our program is if the situation is temporary while they're looking for stable housing, and if the situation is not by choice. If the situation is a little iffy and if we're trying to determine if they qualify for our program, typically we would ask them where they would stay if they could not stay with relatives or friends. And if the answer is they would have nowhere else to go, then we will typically qualify them for our program. So some signs to look out for out at the schools that a student might be eligible for our program. If they are chronically hungry and ordering maybe multiple breakfasts or lunches, and if they are coming to school without having had breakfast in the morning, or if they're taking food home on the bus in the afternoon. If they're chronically tired and having a lot of trouble staying awake during classes, that could also be a sign that they're in transition if they are moving around a lot at night and maybe aren't getting enough sleep. If they have really erratic attendance or tardiness issues, this is also a big one if we're trying to track down families who are constantly in transition and maybe they are needing transportation to get to and from school that's causing their attendance issues. If they consistently have poor grooming and hygiene, this would be if they don't have access to showers, then we can help out with locating places for them to take showers as well. Another big one is if they are lacking records when they are enrolling, or sometimes parents aren't sure the last few schools that they attended just because they've attended so many, then that could be a big sign as well. Unaccompanied youth are also a population of students who qualify for McKinney-Vento, and this would be any student who is not in the physical custody of a parent or a legal guardian. Sometimes it could be a high school student who's couch surfing with friends or shows up at a youth shelter. We'd also have younger students, elementary and middle school, who can be unaccompanied as well. Typically, those students are staying with a grandparent, aunt, uncle, or other relative that does not have any legal guardianship over them. And if we qualify these students, it is because they are both unaccompanied and they are McKinney-Vento, lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Some of the common themes of unaccompanied youth, especially in high school, if they leave home for various reasons. It could be conflict at home, not feeling safe. It could be if their parent is incarcerated or facing some other issues that don't make it safe for the student to live at home. Sometimes students are kicked out of their home due to conflict. A lot of the themes we see are teen pregnancy or the teen's sexual orientation or gender identity. That could be a cause for getting kicked out of the home. Sometimes we end up with parents who move out of state or are deported, and the student is left here with a family member or other friend or relative. If there are legal issues going on with a parent and the student is just temporarily staying with a relative. And then, of course, if we have families who are in a homeless situation and maybe parents are splitting them up and having some other kids stay with friends or relatives until they can get their own housing and get back on their feet, those would also be unaccompanied youth as well. Things to look out for to identify unaccompanied youth, kind of the same as other McKinney-Vento students, poor attendance or chronic tardiness issues, hygiene issues. If they are not coming to school because they say they don't have transportation to and from school, that could be an indicator. If they talk about living with friends or other family members with you or with their peers, And then also for younger children, if relatives are coming in to register them for school but cannot produce any legal guardianship paperwork, then that might be a sign of an unaccompanied youth as well. The services and resources that we have available to McKinney-Vento students are pretty broad, but some of the biggest ones are transportation to and from school as they're moving around from different places. We have some limited housing resources that we can refer families to. Free tutoring for all of our McKinney-Vento students is available as well. We can also help them navigate other community agencies and resources as we might have connections with some of those agencies. We can always help with getting basic needs items for them, vital records like birth certificate, social security card, if that is needed for families to get into housing. And then we always waive all sports and extracurricular activity fees or fines for students. And sometimes we can help them get access to equipment or supplies that they need for sports or extracurriculars. If you have any questions about McKinney-Vento, you can of course reach out to myself or Katie Greer, our clerk, or each school also has a designated building point of contact for McKinney-Vento. Usually this is a counselor or a resource coordinator, and you can always reach out to myself or Katie if you're not sure who your point of contact is. Thanks for watching today, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much.